When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messa & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back to another edition of Football 24/7. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II, and I'm joined by our Eagles insider, the one and only John McMullen. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys are also locked in on the content. We appreciate all the love and support that you guys always provide. We appreciate the hate as well. So make sure you guys always like and always make sure you guys continue to troll, because it makes sure it keeps the traffic on the channel very, very high. So we appreciate you guys so much for locking in on the content as always, man. Your Philadelphia Eagles, they are 6-1 entering week 8 of the NFL season. Man, John, it seems like we just got here.
Yeah, it moves fast. I mean, that's the thing about the NFL versus the other major sports. You only got 17 of these things. So, makes everything a little bit more important. And yeah, once you get into it, it kind of flies by. The Eagles are kind of humming along, maybe not up to their standard, but bottom line, two best teams in the NFL. It's very familiar. 6-1, Kansas City, 6-1, Philadelphia.
Has that ever happened before? Two of the same teams who met in the previous Super Bowl, have they ever, at any point, both had the same or the best record in their respective conferences? Has that ever happened before?
I'm sure it has. Back in the 70s when he had a group of teams that were good every single year, but I don't know off the top of my head. But it's rare that in a parity-driven league. And to be honest, if you talk to people in Kansas City, they'll say the same thing. They think the Chiefs haven't been all that good compared to their standard. Same thing here in Philadelphia. A lot of people think the Eagles haven't played to their standard, but bottom line is they both find ways to win far more often than not. And, other teams have more hiccups, at least to date. Long way to go. I mean, Eagles' top part of their schedule still coming up after this. It starts really after this Commanders game. And Dallas comes into Lincoln Financial Field. We know how big of a game that's going to be. Then you have the bye. Then you're at Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, again, Seattle. So that's the sort of the juggernaut part of the schedule. And then you finish up with the Giants, Cardinals, and Giants again. So you get a little respite at the end. But still, the tough part is coming up.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And, they had the Commanders this week, like you said, Cowboys coming up. But after that Commanders game, the trade deadline is right there on the doorstep. And Howie Roseman has already made his first move. He's already pulled the trigger once, bringing in All-Pro and Pro Bowl safety and Kevin Byard. Now, John, it's just you and I. No one else is listening, okay? is there anything that you may know that you would like to share with the class of just you and I? Anything that maybe, I don't know, that you heard through the grapevine in the NovaCare complex? And again, it's only me and you here talking, so don't worry about everybody else.
Howie's everybody. Howie's always calling, and he's always trying to improve this team. As you kind of saw it after the Miami game. They give up. That's the number one ranked offense in the NFL. They completely shut them down. They give up 10 points, however many yards, 244 yards or whatever it was. In most, as I point out all the time, most teams in this league, most general managers in this league would, pat themselves on the back and say, that's pretty good. And he's out there the next day getting Kevin Byard because he knows he needs help on the back end of the defense. So that's how his mentality is always going to look. But, understand he's kind of out of ammunition when you talk about draft picks for next year. Now he's got plenty of them, but you can't trade compensatory picks until they become real, and they're not real yet. The Eagles know they're coming, but they don't have a lot of day three stuff available to make trades, and obviously they don't want to give up their premium picks, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult. If I were a betting man, I would lean more towards that's it, Kevin Byard. But if he can get a slot corner that he thinks is an upgrade, he'll certainly look down that route. They already brought in Julio Jones, so I think they're done at receiver. People say backup running back. The value he places on running backs. He's not going to trade for running backs. So backup offensive lineman, maybe, but splashy stuff. And then you have guys going out the door. That's a possibility. Derek Barnett's of the world. Can he get something for Derek Barnett? Doesn't trade Derek Barnett. I know everybody else wants to trade Derek Barnett, but he may not. But he could lean on. Remember, this team is. It's pretty evident they're all in on the Super Bowl,
right?
So for people saying, "Well, Derek Barnett's not gonna be here next year," that's correct, but he doesn't really care. He's trying to win a Super Bowl right now, and this whole defense is built on that defensive front and how they can come at you in waves. So he doesn't necessarily want to give up depth. So I would lean towards more he's done, but as you've heard from Diana Rossini and Thomas Dimitrov has been doing the rounds, and everybody's saying how he's picking up the phone. Well,
he's up to something.
Yeah, he's got one of these. He calls everybody about everything because he wants to keep his pulse on what other people are doing as well. So I think maybe some people don't understand that at times as well.
I mean, those are the signs of a great GM, right? A guy who keeps his finger on the pulse of the market, whether if he's able to take advantage of it or not. I mean, that's how certain moves are made, man. I mean, if you don't know what's going out there in those streets, how can you bust moves, right? So it's really important, for again a guy of his caliber, a guy of his experience level. It's only natural for him to always keep his finger on the pulse of what's going on out there.
Yeah, and that's why you constantly hear his name. So anytime anybody writes, the aggregators, I like to call them, write about, 5 most people likely to be traded, and everything is ... and the Eagles, because everybody knows how he checks in on everything.
So let's get into this injury report. One name that stood out to me on there was Jordan Davis and James Bradbury, but walk us through the injury report. Were there any surprise names on there for you? What are you hearing in terms of Jordan Davis? Is he a game time decision? Try to give us the 411 on that, John.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan is obviously the most interesting one. He hurt his hamstring at practice on Thursday. And it was pretty evident. We saw him in the locker room. Now, there's some good and bad in this. So I wrote about it and I tried to parse it through. He wasn't moving well, I would say. And he was having a long conversation with Patrick McDowell, who was a player development guy and a scout. And you say, well, that's not that big of a deal. But Patrick's history before he moved to football ops is he was the assistant strength and conditioning coach. So he was having a long discussion. I can only imagine it was about the hamstring, about how to deal with it, what you need to do over the next couple days. So that's not a good sign. However, if it were serious, he'd be in with the training staff right away. They wouldn't have let him go in the locker room. So that part of it's good. He did not practice today. That part of it's not good. As you go through the week, he was a full practice on Wednesday, which was an estimation. Hurt his hamstring on Thursday. He was limited. Friday, he did not practice, so he's going in a negative direction. I asked Nick Sirianni about it, and he said we still got time. And true to his word, he was listed as questionable. Now, Nick believes when it comes to injuries, he believes in competitive advantage. He believes it is an advantage. He believes other teams don't take advantage of things like that. So he's going to push it as far as he can. And then you have what I just talked about. After this week is Dallas. So do they play that game? Did I want to make sure he's completely healthy for Dallas? Do they think they can get through this Washington game? You got to be careful with that, though, because the last time I thought they took that path with the Jets,
I was just thinking about that. Taking the opponent lightly
and bite them a little bit. So again, similar to trade deadline. If you're asking me my feel today is he's probably not going to play. But they'll probably kick it to game time.
Yeah. That's what it seems like, especially when you think about a guy like, him, with that size and, will you be doing more damage to him throwing him out there if he's not fully ready? By you not playing him, could you potentially be setting the stage for you to lose this game to the Washington Commanders? They did play the Philadelphia Eagles tough last time. That's something that shouldn't be overlooked. Granted, they are adding a pretty good player in Kevin Byard to the mix. And on top of that, this defense has been trending in the right direction, especially in terms of defending the pass. Earlier in the season, they were one of the worst teams in terms of defending the pass. I think at one point they were ranked like 27th or 26th. We have a 7-game sample size now. They've improved to be the 18th ranked pass defense. So they're trending in the right direction with that. The past 3 games, they've given up about 180, 183 passing yards, to quarterbacks. 2 of those quarterbacks, some considered to be top 10 guys, and Matthew Stafford and Tua Tagovailoa. So this pass defense is trending in the right direction. You add Kevin Byard to the mix, you can only imagine that it'll be better, and they should have a better chance of actually closing out the Commanders this time rather than allowing them to hang around.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem in the first game was, not finishing some stuff. And obviously, you look at it from a Washington perspective, Ron Rivera probably should have tried to steal the win, went for it, and then we'd be having a difficult conversation if they lost the game. Yeah, they didn't play well, but they persevered, and that's been the story when they haven't played well for the most part, with the lone exception of the Jets. The Commanders, for whatever reason, at least over recent seasons, seem to play better in Philadelphia than they do in Washington. Last year it was the Carson Wentz game when he got sacked 9 times. Eagles pretty much handled that easily. And they're on the precipice of sort of, some issues. I think everybody understands that this is probably a lame duck coach with a new owner. New owners tend to want their own people. So unless Ron Rivera gets this thing turned around, maybe makes the playoffs, maybe even has to win a game in the playoffs, which is going to be very difficult. Um, Otherwise, he's going to be gone. So two things can happen in that kind of scenario, and people can give up easily, or they can fight and claw, and we'll see where they are this weekend. But I will say the 7th seed in the NFCs right now is 3-4, so they're not out of anything. So people saying, "Oh, they're going to give up because nobody's out of anything."
Right at this point in the
Yeah,
season.
yeah. 2-4 teams aren't out of anything. So um, I don't think that's going to be an issue. But they're having some issues when it comes to pass protection. Obviously, Sam Howell's on pace to break the all-time record for being sacked in a season if he makes it healthy enough. And obviously the Eagles, you talked about their pass defense, and it has gotten better, but I don't think it has anything to do with the secondary. I really don't.
Come
I
on,
don't
John.
think
I
I
think those guys are improving in some way, right? Maybe
I
they're
don't
maybe.
think it has anything to do with the secondary. And I
Oh
wrote about
man.
that. I said, the Eagles, and I asked James Bradbury this week, and he said he didn't even think about it. He had not thought about it until I brought it up to him. And I was actually wrong. That the Eagles to this point have used 7 different slot cornerbacks, and it's actually 8 because I forgot Slay played a
Wow.
few snaps in Los Angeles. So it's actually 8 to get through these games. And I asked James if he's ever been a part of anything like that, and right away he said his eyes bugged out. He said, "No, it's um, yeah, it ain't good." And this week, I think it's going to be Sidney Brown moving parts again. I think they're going to put Sidney back in the slot. So that's some news. I think Kevin Byard's playing the whole game. And yeah, I think Byard's going to be and Reed Blankenship's back as well. So I think, Kevin's going to help a lot. That's a really good player. They still got to figure out the slot.
Yeah.
Roby's going to be out again. He's already been ruled out. So, yeah. I mean, Doug Peterson said years ago when he was here, I think I asked him what's the quickest way for a season to go south. And he said multiple injuries at the same position. Multiple injuries at the same position. And that's how good the Eagles' defensive line is, because the Eagles have used 8 slot cornerbacks in 7 games, and somehow they're 6-1.
I mean, you bring up a good point, though. I mean, I'm pretty sure Darius Slay is on the same side as you, because I think in his one of his interviews today, he mentioned how we're led by that defensive line. You know what I mean? We basically, in so many words, we go as they go. So I mean, you're not totally wrong. I guess I like to give the guys a little bit more credit. At the end of the day, the ball has to go in the air. They got to do their jobs. But I mean, you're not wrong, though. That defensive line has been ferocious, and it's interesting because I think they're ranked 3rd or 4th in the league in sacks right now. And I know you're not a sack guy, but it's fascinating that this defensive line maybe won't eclipse that 70 sack mark like they did last year. That's pretty unprecedented, in terms of today's NFL. But they've improved so much in run defense, yet they're still one of the best pass rushing teams in the NFL. It's almost like, you ask yourself, would you rather have a 70 sack season but be terrible at the run, or would you rather be pretty damn good at the in terms of sacks and be pretty damn good in terms of stopping the run? So I'm pretty sure a lot of fans would take the latter, because again, this team has just been so dominant in terms of stopping the run. They're so far ahead of people in terms of limiting rushing yards. I think they're limiting teams to about 62, 63 rushing yards a game. The next closest team was like 75 or 78. So they have like a 15-yard disparity there. I mean, speak on how dominant this defensive line just has been, at least over the past 3 games.
It's pretty much the whole season. I mean, yeah. I mean, when you say I'm not a sack guy, I think sacks are never a bad thing. I say, but I think
Sack guy, yeah, you're not a sack guy.
People don't realize that it's not the be all end all, and
Right.
because a lot that, man, I guarantee you this week, and Jody all this week has put the over under on 7.5 sacks for Sam Howell. And I get his thought process. His thought process is, well, everybody else sacks Sam Howell, and the Eagles have the best defensive line, so they're going to sack him more than everybody else. But it doesn't work that way. It kind of works the opposite. Everybody speeds up when they're playing the Eagles. In other words, Eric Bieniemy, I guarantee, has had Sam Howell all week and said, ball's got to come out this week. Ball's got to come out, period. And if you look at the time to throw that each quarterback has used, every single one of them is sped up from their normal release time. So that's kind of what happens. You game plan for your specific opponent, and everybody's saying, got to speed it up, got to speed it up. But a lot of good things can happen when you speed up the quarterback that don't involve sacks. And it could be as simple as an incompletion. It could be a strip sack, and the Eagles haven't. The one part they want to get better at turnovers. Obviously, that's the one part where they haven't been nearly as good as last year, and that's got to improve. But a lot of good things can happen when you get pressure, and the Eagles get constant pressure, and not to pick on the secondary, but why not? We'll pick on the secondary. That first half and the Rams, they were getting destroyed.
They sure were.
They were getting destroyed. And in the second half, the defense, all right, that's done. And all of a sudden, Matthew Stafford gets sped up. He's not comfortable. Open receivers down the field. He can't get the football to him. But they were open. Even if you go back to Tampa Bay, which looks like a dominant performance on paper, the first 2 drives, Baker Mayfield had something with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and he just lost his mind from that point forward. He just could not get that pass rush out of his head. And then, of course, when Avante got hurt in week 2, the immediacy of, the Eagles were up 20 points in that game. And all of a sudden, here comes Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson. So it hasn't been good. I'm not going to paint that rosy picture. The secondary hasn't been good. And all the injuries at safety as well. Justin Evans out. Reed Blankenship in and out. Terrell Edmonds having to play. Sidney Brown out 3 games with a hamstring. They've had a lot of injury issues, and I think it'll start getting better now that Byard is here. But, yeah, I'm not going to pretend it's been good to this point because it hasn't been good.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately you are right. At the end of the day, when you think about the Miami game, right, there were many situations where it looked like Tua had something. And then all of a sudden the pass rush just rattles him, man. A guy like Tua, who has the lengthy injury history that he's had, you can only imagine how fast that clock sped up in his head, knowing he wants to protect himself. So, yeah, man, a pass rush like the Philadelphia Eagles, you definitely want to prepare for. But I guess when I think about the Commanders, right, they're giving up so many sacks. And I know you say, when you have an opponent like the Philadelphia Eagles, your game plan to get that ball out quick. But when your offensive line is as putrid as theirs is, wouldn't that be the game plan for every single game, regardless of who they play? Because they're giving up sacks against everybody, and everyone doesn't have the same talent on the defensive line as the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, but from the perspective, look, yeah, they don't want to get sacked as much as Sam Howell. Nobody does. I mean, David Carr's got the
You know he's
record.
on pace for like
Yeah,
90 sacks.
yeah, he's going to show the record. I think is 76 or 75 or 76.
Something like
David
that, yeah.
Carr, Derek's brother, which kind of ruined his career. By the way, he was so shell shocked because he had a lot of talent. Um, Yeah, I don't think he's even gonna make it, but that's what I'm saying. You know, you go into a normal week and the Commanders should be, you know, they should be trying to teach Sam Howell every week that he, you know, you gotta be on time, you gotta get the football out of your hand. But it becomes a greater emphasis against Philadelphia. And again, you've already seen it with quarterbacks speeding up. Kirk Cousins holds on to the football forever because he's one of the guys that wants to get the football down the field, make big plays down the field. You saw the air yards he had on Monday night against the Eagles. He sped up, you know, still slow compared to everybody else, but he sped up from 2.9 or 3 to 2.6. You look at each individual quarterback. Tua gets rid of the football faster than anybody on a daily basis, weekly basis, but it's still sped up against the Eagles. It was even quicker. And that's been the case all season. And it'll be the case with Sam Howell. Was the first time they played him. It was probably his best game getting the football out because he knew he had to get the football out at least better than he typically does.
You know, you bring up that first initial matchup of the season, and it was extremely competitive. The Eagles were down by double digits at one point in the game. They came back, took the lead, and then the Commanders punched back, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in overtime, and the Eagles win by a field goal. You know, and then I guess when I think about that game, Sam Howell had arguably his best game as a pro, and I'm curious to know, what do you think the Philadelphia Eagles need to do to make sure that that result, or I guess the way it played out, doesn't necessarily transpire the way it did back then? Because I think this Philadelphia Eagles team has improved since that game, despite the Jets loss. I still think they've improved. I guess at least as far as just how things are flowing, they seem a little bit more. They seem to have a little bit more continuity, a little bit more flow to the offense. The defense is playing better. The pass rush has become more ferocious. You add Kevin Byard. I'm curious to know, what can the Philadelphia Eagles do differently in this matchup compared to that last matchup? Because I don't know if Sam Howell can replicate what he did in that initial matchup, but still, knowing that Bieniemy is going to have him as prepared as he possibly can, what do you think the Commanders may do differently? What do you think the Philadelphia Eagles may do differently?
Well, I don't think they're going to do that much differently. In fact, I was talking to Nick about, you know, a division rival facing them the second time and so close together. It's inside of a month. I was interested to see if that's, you know, a good thing from a coaching perspective, a bad thing, indifferent. You know, what kind of advantage, what kind of disadvantage is it? But you know, the only thing he mentioned is there's no time to change, and he brought up, you know, you know, in the past when you have a wider disparity, say you play somebody early in the season, then late in the season, oftentimes you have a complete shift. It might be due to injury, player development, what have you. But you might face a completely different team. Probably the biggest perspective is some personnel. Emmanuel Forbes, that was one of the worst decisions in the history of mankind, letting him travel with AJ Brown. They did the
Talk about
same
trial
thing.
by fire.
Yeah, I mean, the poor kid is the 16th pick in the draft, I think, and they could have had Christian Gonzalez, but Christian's a lot better, but he also got hurt. But they also let him follow DJ Moore, and DJ Moore destroyed him, who's, you know, on a bad team, but a very good receiver. And, you know, somebody at the Eagles were joking. AJ and DJ destroyed his career in 2 weeks. So they'll have Benjamin St. Just on AJ Brown, I would think, mainly, and Kendall Fuller obviously is a good corner. And he's playing really well this year. And now they have Danny Johnson playing in the slot. So maybe the slot becomes more important. They essentially benched Forbes since that DJ Moore game.
Wow.
And
bench your first round pick.
Yeah. Well, it's their own fault. I mean, you don't send rookies on an island against AJ Brown and DJ Moore unless you want them. And certainly not. I mean, there's certain guys, obviously Sauce Gardner probably would have held up a little bit better. But a lot of people thought they overdrafted him to begin with. And yeah, it didn't work out well. So you have a little bit of a personnel difference. Cody Barton's hurt. He's not going to play. It's interesting. The Commanders' offensive line gets a lot of you-know-what, but they haven't played that badly. It's more the quarterback holding on to the football, not getting the football out on time. But they are going to be without one of their guards. Sadiq Charles got ruled out today. So, but Sam Cosme's played well. Andrew Wiley's played fine. Charles Leno's played fine. I think it's more the quarterback and how quickly he can pick things up and get things get rid of the football on time, as I always say. And then the running backs. I mean, Brian Robinson's not had a great year. Antonio Gibson's been really bad, which I'm surprised by. And we had Chris Russell covers the Redskins. Sorry, there it is. Bang. I got to put a dollar in the swear jar. The Commanders, been covering this league for too long. Chris Rodriguez, who's their 6th-round pick, they might give him more time because they're so upset at how the running backs are playing. And then Curtis Samuel, who's the guy who would take advantage, and he did a little bit in the first game. He's banged up. I think he's questionable. So there might be some different personnel things, but yeah, I mean, they played him less than a month ago. Not much is going to change. And the same thing with the Eagles. They're going to be a little bit better. I'm trying to think. That was the Bradbury, because that was week 4.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to look at my schedule. So in Tampa, it was they piecemealed it with Bradbury and Sidney Brown in the slots, and Sidney hurt his hamstring. So Washington was the one game where it was all Bradbury in the slot, and Josh Jobe would rotate in at outside corner. So that's going to be better. Bradbury's going to be back in his normal position. As I said, I think Sidney Brown's going to get most of the work in the slot, but if things go wrong, you have Josiah Scott, Eli Ricks, cast of thousands. And you're going to have Byard back in the secondary next to Reed Blankenship. So that things should be improved from that perspective for the Eagles.
Okay. John, don't worry about that dollar in the swear jar. Trucker Beans has you covered here. He says, where was Kevin Byard ranked amongst safeties this year? I'm sure you use the PFF rankings, right?
Yeah, he's
so where was Kevin ranked? I'm actually curious about that myself. Thanks, Trucker Beans, for the donation. We appreciate the support that you provide to the content.
Kevin is 36th.
36th ranked overall amongst safeties. Okay.
Yeah. So 36 of 85, which is
that's still technically, because you have 2 safeties on the field, so that's still technically a starting caliber safety.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and actually there's probably more now because a lot of teams use 3 safeties. Not a lot, but a few teams use 3 only use 1 linebacker. That's typically a little bit low for Kevin.
Yeah, I was
So
going
if
to
you
ask,
go
is that
back,
a career low for him or?
no, as a rookie, he was 44th, and
Okay.
then he kind of took off in his second year. He was 10th of 87. Then he was 4th of 93, 10th of 83. Then he had a bit of a down year in 2020, 40th of 94, 2021, 1st of 92. That
Wow.
was his second all pro season. 2022 is 8th of 88. So he's been really consistent. His bad seasons are still well above average.
So, like, I'm curious, right? We tend to see guys who are in, we tend to see guys who aren't necessarily in the best environment to really cultivate or really showcase their talent. We know the Tennessee Titans defense, I feel like it's declined throughout Kevin Byard's tenure there, not because of him, but for various other reasons. But I'm curious to know, do you think there's an opportunity for his play to get better, especially behind this Philadelphia Eagles pass rush? I mean, like you said, this pass rush and this defensive line, they're one of the best in the NFL, and they make these DBs look good or make them look at least serviceable, right? Do you think there's an opportunity that Byard can benefit from the same situation?
Yeah. I mean, Nicholas Morrow is the 5th best linebacker in football right now, according to PFF. He ain't the 5th best linebacker in football.
Hey, listen, we use that stat when we're arguing with our friends. We'll still take that though. We'll take that.
And by the way, Nick admits it. I talked 2 weeks ago to Nick about that, and he said, "Yeah, that's why I'm here. I wanted to play behind that defensive front, and it's working out for him." Yeah, I mean, it's a complimentary game. And sometimes you heard Jonathan Gannon say all the time, rush and cover and rush. Sometimes the coverage has got to pick up the rush. Sometimes the rush has got to pick up the coverage. In Philadelphia, the rush is picking up the coverage pretty consistently. But that might change a little bit with Kevin, because Kevin's a really good player. Yeah, and that's one it's going to take me a long time. Yeah, I understand why Tennessee did what they did. He wasn't going to be there. He wasn't going to be there next year. Get something for him. You don't think you're a contender, but I just don't like that mentality in the NFL. That to me is an NBA mentality. You don't have to have an NBA mentality in the NFL. Happens all the time. Worst to first. Happens every year in this league. As I said, the 7th seed right now in the NFC is Minnesota, and they're 3-4. Now, we just happen to be looking at this morning, Jody and I, because he was asking me about teams giving up, and I happened to look at it. I forget the AFC. I'm going to look at it real quick. Mm-hmm. The 7th seed in the AFC right now is a little bit better. Buffalo was 5-3 after the win. So, but you can see with 3 losses, Houston's 3-3. That obviously they haven't played. Jets are 3-3. Cincinnati's 3-3. The Colts are 3-4. The Raiders are 3-4, and then you have the Titans at 2-4. It's hard to jump over all those teams, but to give up so early in the season with a guy who is not only a good player, as we've explained, but he's been their sort of team leader, the team leader, sort of the Malcolm Jenkins of that locker room.
You trade a guy like that sends a clear message to your locker room, not the right message.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it from Tennessee's perspective, but that's what Howie does. He takes advantage of people.
Okay. Final question for you before we get out of here, John. We appreciate you guys for liking on the content. Make sure you guys smash that like button. We appreciate you guys, man. You guys tend to show John and I a lot of love, whether you agree or disagree with us. We appreciate you so much, man. Make sure you guys check John out on Birds 365, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern time with his partner in crime, Jody McDonald, and also check out John on the pre-halftime and post-game show, the JAKIB Sports post-game show at that. So John is always giving you guys some pretty illustrious content. John, final question. Wow, I forgot my final question. Jeez. Okay, I'll put it like this, right? It's back to me now. A.J. Brown, we know him and Kevin Byard have a connection, the Tennessee connection. I think they asked A.J. Brown, or you guys asked A.J. Brown about Kevin Byard being traded to the Eagles. And, he basically said, he said, you're a winner now. Things are done differently around here, but enjoy it and get up to speed. Kevin Byard, he said, if it feels good to wake up 6-1, what are your thoughts on just that dynamic? And, again, you bring a guy like Kevin Byard to a winning situation, all it can do is just reinvigorate this guy and just, tap him into another level of his game. Maybe we get, that all-pro style of Kevin Byard, for the second half of the season. What are your thoughts on A.J. Brown's comments about Kevin Byard joining the team?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I took it as more of a, man, that's a shame. And that's sort of why I hate the trade from a Tennessee perspective, because AJ knows how good that team was.
Yeah, they were in the AFC Championship a few years back.
Yeah, Kevin Byard knows how good that team was. I mean, not only that, since Mike Vrabel's been there, they made the playoffs 3 consecutive years before they kind of fell off last year without AJ. And they didn't win in 2020 and 21. 2019, as you mentioned, they made the championship game. 2020 and 2021, they lost their first game. They lost in the wild card in 2020 to the Ravens. It was a 1-score game, though. And they lost in the divisional round in 2021 to Cincinnati. And that was a game they blew. They should have won.
Yeah.
They were a really good team. And you got AJ, and I saw that exact quote, and I'm saying, wow. I mean, they were winning a lot.
That was an underrated decline from that organization. I mean, it's almost like they declined and nobody realized it until it was too late.
Well, part of it is you give up players like AJ Brown and AJ.
Was that the beginning of the end for them? Was that it?
Well, it fired. We got the GM fired, so that kind of explains. But AJ's a little bit different because Kevin's 30. AJ was 23 when they traded him.
Well, he's 26 now, so he probably was.
Is he that old?
Yeah. AJ, let me make sure I got this right. AJ Brown is he's because Jalen's 24. Jalen's 24.
Yeah,
so
you're right. So June he turned 26. So yeah, he's still a very young player. And obviously they didn't want to pay him, even though he was producing at a high level.
With the limited opportunities at that in a running style offense.
Yeah. In a running style offense, and it just, and John Robinson got fired. He was the GM, and there was a lot of talk that Amy Adams-Strunk, who's the principal owner, didn't want to put the hamstring on him, didn't want to pay AJ what AJ needed, and the Eagles and Nick Sirianni mentioned it the other day. Thank you, Jeffrey Lurie, for giving us the $100 million to get A.J. Brown. They didn't want to pay that. So, I mean, that's where you are. And if they kept A.J. Brown, and they still need to fix the quarterback position long term, but maybe they would still be a first place team. Yeah, it's
a possibility. But the Philadelphia Eagles are now, and have been for the past couple of years a first place team. Hopefully they can hold that down and get a win against the Washington Commanders. John, I appreciate you as always for taking time out to do the show, man. I know you're a busy man. I know you have your daily show, you rip and run around the NovaCare complex, trying to make sure you keep your eyes and ears, peered to each and everything, man. I appreciate you, my guy. Eagles fans, make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys continue to stay engaged in the content on JAKIB Sports. Make sure you guys are subscribed as well. We appreciate all the love and support, and we appreciate the hate that you guys may provide at certain times. And we appreciate you guys holding us accountable, man.
The hate.
Yes, John. Don't you get it sometimes?
I get it.
Sometimes they love to hate you, and sometimes they hate to love you, man. It's all a part of the game here.
I get it all the time. I didn't think you got it.
Oh man, listen.
You're too likable.
You think so? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's sometimes it depends on the platform.
I don't pander to fans, so they don't like that sometimes.
See, that's the thing. I pander sometimes, and they still hate me, John.
Yeah.
So I'm just kidding, you guys. I appreciate y'all. You guys are always showing me love for the most part, man. It's always the one or two knuckleheads, few and far between, man. I appreciate y'all. But again, you guys were locked in on football 24/7 with our Eagles insider, the one and only, the best in the biz, John McMullen. And I'm your guy, Tony DeShields II. We appreciate you guys. Take care. One love. Stay humble. Stay healthy. And most importantly, stay hungry. And we'll see you next time.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At McMullen Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. McMullen Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.